Hi everyone.
Okay, good morning everybody. I will detail today the extraction techniques for the recovery of nutraceuticals and high added value components from food
Excuse me,
waste.
madam.
Yes?
Madam, I will start this session, madam. Then after I will hand over to the Professor Kumar Sahu. Then after you can start the
Okay,
session.
okay, okay. So,
Yes. Hi everyone.
okay,
Respected eminent speaker of today's session, Professor Teresa Sechi, Department of Chemistry, ITT Montani, Palermo, Italy, and convener of this program, Dr. Jagdish Panda sir, Raghu College of Pharmacy, Principal, co-convener, Dr. Professor Kumar Sahu, Professor, Head of the Department, Pharmaceutical Analysis, Raghu College of Pharmacy, all the principals, faculty members, research scholars, students of different colleges across the country, welcoming you all and warm welcoming you all for this today's webinar on extraction techniques for the recovery of nutraceuticals and high added value components from food waste. Today we have on board our eminent speaker, Professor Teresa Sechi, and our co-convener, Dr. Praful Kumar Sahu. Now, I request Dr. Praful Kumar Sahu to take over the session and few words about Teresa Sechi. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jogendra. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. A very good afternoon to everyone present on this platform. I take this privilege to warmly welcome all the active participants on the second session of our international webinar on extraction techniques for the recovery of nutraceuticals and high added value components from food waste. To welcome is to show honor. To welcome is to establish integrity. While it's obvious to feel happy to deliver a welcome note for our eminent speaker, I am also excited and feel blessed for this role. As this international webinar is built with an intent of active and interactive learning co-organized by Raghu College of Pharmacy, Visakhapatnam, India, and ITT Montani, Fermo, Italy. I heartily welcome Dr. Teresa Secchi, Professor, Department of Chemistry and Materials, ITT Montani, an eminent scholar and academician in analytical chemistry. Her ideas and researches have assured in several developments in analytical chemistry towards retention modeling, analysis of pharmaceutical employing ion interaction chromatography, gas chromatography, including hyphenated techniques among us many other noteworthy laureates to be mentioned here. I hope that all of you will have a wonderful session of interesting and stimulating discussions. I sincerely wish that this webinar will be a great success, not only as an opportunity to share knowledge and experiences, but also as the beginning of a long and fruitful cooperation and friendship among us towards teaching and training. I again extend a warm welcome to everybody present here. May I request Professor Teresa Secchi to continue her session. Madam, please, you can start.
okay. Thank you everybody for this opportunity. As we were saying, we are going to deal with extraction techniques for the recovery of nutraceuticals and high added value components from food waste. The topics covered by these lessons are the following. Food waste can be precious feedstock for the pharma sector, and cascading is the process to recover high value added compounds from waste. Where does cascading occur? It occurs in a biorefinery within the green chemistry and sustainability framework. We will go through the emergent extraction techniques and we will deal with a case study. Well, the keyword of this presentation is actually sustainability, and in an historical perspective, the cornerstone year is 1972 with the UNESCO Stockholm conference about the environmental concept. And 20 years later, another conference was in Rio de Janeiro, and again, 20 years later, another conference of UNO on sustainability took place again in Rio. And what about the Agenda 2030? It was put forth in 2015, and it details 17 sustainable goals, and among them, there are some of them, at least 4 of them, that are particularly important for the pharma sector. For example, the 9th, industry, innovation and infrastructure, but also the 3rd, good health and well-being, the 12th and the 13th, the responsible consumption and production, as well the climate action. So what is a sustainable product or process? A system can be considered sustainable when it can be maintained to a certain level indefinitely. For this reason, we have to take care of at least 3 aspects, which is the social, ecological, and economic aspect. The 3 pillars of the multifaceted sustainability concept is actually contained in the triple bottom line: planet, people, and profit. Planet is important because we have to prevent the depletion of essential resources, and we have to reduce the ecological footprint of each business. And for doing so, we have to reduce the manufacturing waste in a cradle-to-cradle approach. I mean, waste should not exist. Waste should become the feedstock for a subsequent process. And what about people? Obviously, we know that we have to respect human rights, and this is crucial in any business. And the profit, obviously, profit is the goal shared by all business, but profit should be considered as the economic benefit not only for the company, but for the society at large. So what is Europe doing in this context? The Green Deal, the European Green Deal, was put forth recently, and it deals with the climate change. Europe should be climate neutral by 2050, and to reach this goal, the aims are, first of all, to decarbonize the energy sector, since energy accounts for more than 25% of greenhouse gas emissions, and also Europe needs to renovate building construction to help people cut their energy bills and energy use, and also the mobility is concerned in this Green Deal, because mobility, 25% of our emissions comes from transportation. But what we are now interested in is industry. Europe is going to support industry to innovate and to become a leader of the green economy. What can be done? First of all, we need the principle of green chemistry, obviously. We need to prevent waste. Among these 12 principles of green chemistry, there are 4 principles that are particularly important. First of all, the prevention of waste. As I told you before, waste should be considered as a new feedstock for subsequent processes. And then in the pharma industry, we need to use safe or no solvents at all. And we have to avoid energy consumption with low temperature and low energy, not energy intensive processes. But the most important principle is to use renewable resources. And in this context, the food waste could be really precious. Well, the pillars of the circular bioeconomy is the fact that waste does not exist, and biomass is the key renewable resource not only for food and feed supply, but also for the production of alternatives to fossil-based products and energy. Consumables should be returned to the biosphere without negative effects after a sequence of biocascading steps in which extraction techniques are crucial, and renewable energy should be used to fuel the process. Well, so here you see the waste framework of directive waste hierarchy. We see a pyramid. On the top, we have obviously prevention and reuse. At the bottom, we find the least important possibility, that is waste disposal. Let's focus on reuse and recycling of waste. We see here another pyramid, that is the cascading pyramid. In the cascading approach, biomass is used as effectively as possible to extract first materials, fine chemicals, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and nutraceuticals, for example, and then for food and feed, and then to via fermentative pathways to get fermentation products for bioplastic, for example, for biofuels, and so on. And only in the end, you can burn biomass to produce heat and electricity. Let's focus on the recovery of pharmaceuticals and fine chemicals from food waste. You can do that within a biorefinery that can be classified according to a number of different criteria. First of all, the raw material selection. In this case, the feedstock can be, for example, food crops, but the first generation of biorefinery had a very big problem because of land competition between the food crops, between the possibility to use crop for the biorefinery itself or for feeding. So we went on with the second generation of biorefinery, in which food waste can be used as feedstock, or non-food crops and agro-industrial and forestry residual can be used instead of food crops. And the third generation includes the use of algae, and the fourth generation includes the use directly of carbon dioxide. According to the transformation technology selection, we can use physical or thermochemical or biochemical or chemical methods. Today we will focus on chemical, above all on chemical methods. And according to the output selection, biorefinery can give us fine chemicals, pharmaceuticals, bioactives, and bio-based materials, but also the bioenergy to fuel the entire process. And so, now let's go in more depth as regards the emergent extraction techniques for the recovery of nutraceuticals and high added value components from food waste. We have at least 4 steps. The core step is obviously extraction, but we need a pre-treatment at the beginning of the process, and we often need to separate small molecules from big biomolecules, big macromolecules. In the end of the process, we have a purification and isolation step before product formation. So we will go through each of these steps. Okay, let's start with the definition of nutraceuticals. Nutraceutical is a portmanteau word invented by De Felice in 1989 and it means a food or a part of a food that provides medical or health benefits, including the prevention or the treatment of a disease. And polyphenols, alkaloids, carotenoids, prebiotics, phytosterols, tannins, fatty acid, and so on are often recognized as health promoting compounds. Hence, they are considered nutritive pharmaceuticals, or, as the word says, nutraceutical. They gain a wide interest in the last 2 decades because they promote health, and there is evidence of clinical success. They can be antioxidant, antimicrobial, anti-diabetic, antihypertensive, anticoagulant, anti-cancer, or hypocholesteremic agents. Let's have a look to the classes of nutraceuticals. In the most important nutraceuticals are obviously antioxidants. Antioxidants are able to prevent or mitigate the oxidative stress undergone by cells during the respiration. In the cytochrome chain, some electrons there can be a leakage of electrons from the cytochrome chain, and thereby reactive oxygen species can be formed. In this case, the extraction from, above all, polyphenols, which are the main class of antioxidants, from a vast variety of wastes from the vegetable world has been exploited. For example, peach, grape, olive oil, olive meal wastewater, but pineapple, mango, radicchio, cucumbers, zucchini, and coffee waste were also explored to extract precious antioxidant. So there's a hidden treasure inside, buried within this food waste. Polyphenols are classified, can be divided in 4 main groups. Each group can be in turn divided in subgroups. We have phenolic acid, flavonoids, stilbenes, and lignanes. So all of them have been extracted for a vast variety of food waste. We go on with specific nutraceutical. I would like to emphasize some of them. For example, quercetin from onion processing waste is proved to be able to protect the cell from chemotherapy and radiotherapy side effects. Or glucosinate has a protective action against cancer that can be extracted from brassica vegetable wastes, or benzyl isothiocyanate from papaya seed. Again, it's able to prevent. It is a health protective compound able to inhibit chemical-induced cancer. And also, astaxanthin can be obtained, for example, from during the recovery of chitosan from chitin from shrimp waste as a co-product during the cascading approach. And also fish protein hydrolysate from marine-derived waste are useful as antioxidant, anticoagulant, antimicrobial, ACE inhibitory effect. They have an inhibitory effect, and calcium binding, and they have also a calcium binding activity. And what about docosahexaenoic and other polyunsaturated fatty acid? They have positive impacts from on hypertension and myocardial infarction and cancer. And again, they can be obtained from residual mesh, from bilberry byproducts, or from liquid residue from potato chip processing. Dietary fiber and fats, again, can be obtained from a vast gamut of food waste. And again, the list could be endless, but again, I would like to emphasize some more nutraceuticals from, for example, whey protein and bioactive whey peptides have positive influence on cardiovascular, endocrine, and immune systems. They, for example, I think about lactoferricin from lactoferrin, and I will show you later how to isolate this specific bioactive peptides from whey. Or we have minor whey proteins, for example, immunoglobulins and colostrum are precious for immunocompromised people. And from whey, we also have lactose, and I will show you later how to recover lactose from whey. And lactose-derived nutraceuticals include lactulose and lactitol for treating patients with chronic constipation. And, for example, also lactobionic acid, usually produced via the oxidation of lactose, finds application in skin care products. And galacto-oligosaccharides or lactosucrose are potent prebiotic compounds. But strictly pharmaceutical compounds can also be found in food waste. For example, bromelain, which is a proteolytic enzyme with important anti-inflammatory and antithrombotic and fibrinolytic properties, can be obtained from ananas, from the pineapple fruit. And also chondroitin sulfate, that is important for the osteoarthritis treatment, can be recovered from fish cartilage. So after these, after the illustration of how many specific nutraceuticals and actually pharmaceutical compounds can be obtained from food waste, we will go to the four steps to recover them. The first step, you will probably remember, was the pre-treatment. And the pre-treatment differs according to the nature of the food waste sample. If it is a solid sample, we usually need to reduce the size of the sample via milling or cryogenic milling in case of thermolabile compounds, or wet milling to improve the extractability of the target compounds. We sometimes need an hydrolysis step or a physical or biochemical attack of the matrix, of the solid matrix. And instead, on the other hand, for watery sample, we need usually a solid liquid separation to improve the subsequent extraction yield. And to remove water, we usually need thermal processing, but the thermal processing is very energy intensive because we need a lot of heat to vaporize water. Thermal processing can be thermal drying, simple thermal drying, or dielectric drying with the help of microwave, for example, or freeze drying in which sublimation of ice occurs. Mechanical drying is less energy intensive and it includes centrifugation and variable filtration, different filtration methods, but also electro-osmotic dewatering for colloidal particles which bear also all of them bear the same, all of them are in the same charge status, so they will not separate easily. And also expression. Full nut drying is an emerging solid liquid separation for the pre-treatment of food waste, and it includes the use of foaming agents. After the pre-treatment step, we find, just a moment, I would like to recall you some basic about filtration. During the whole process, we use filtration many times, but we go from microfiltration, in which only big particles are retained, to reverse osmosis, in which water can pass the pore size. So according to the pore size, we have, for example, reverse osmosis, in which only water are able to go through the pores of the membrane, and then to the nanofiltration, which is very useful for the salting, because water and salts can go through the pore, to the pores, can pass through the pores, and then to the ultrafiltration. In ultrafiltration, also sugars can go through the pores, and so it is useful to separate, for example, proteins which are not able to pass the pores from a watery matrix. And in microfiltration, as I told you before, everything goes through the pores, and in the retentate we only find very big particles and colloidal micelles and so on. After this focus on filtration techniques, which are used in many different steps of the process, we go on after the pre-treatment with the separation of small and large molecules. The first method to separate small from large macromolecules was precipitation. Alcohol precipitation or isoelectric precipitation can be very effective. Isoelectric precipitation relies on the fact that at the isoelectric points, molecules of proteins bear, all the proteins at their isoelectric point bear a net zero charge. So they are able to interact hydrophobically and they would precipitate. Also, alcohol precipitation is a very well-known technique in which the dielectric constant of the mixture prevents the solubilization of the proteins that would precipitate. And another technique is obviously ultrafiltration. I have just told you before that in ultrafiltration, proteins are not able to go through the pores of the membrane, so we find proteins in the retentate. And an emerging technique for the separation of small to large macromolecules is gas aphrons. They are actually microbubbles of surfactant stabilized microbubbles able to absorb reversibly molecules, macromolecules in a particular charge status. This way, proteins can be separated from a watery matrix. Obviously, in this case, the surfactants should be separated in the end of the process, or bio-based surfactants should be used. Food-grade surfactants should be used. And what about ultrasound-assisted crystallization is obviously very useful because ultrasound provoke cavitation and the nucleation of nucleation and crystal growth. Super saturation occurs during cavitation, and we have a fine crystal growth that is particularly important. And the last but perhaps less used technique is extrusion. We go on with extraction. Now we are in the core of our presentation, and I would like to recall some basic concepts of extraction. Extraction is the distribution, relies on the distribution of an analyte between two immiscible phases, and the distribution constant K is usually a function of the temperature, first of all, but of the nature of the phases, but also on the nature of the analyte. We usually have a trade-off between selectivity and efficiency. The more efficient the extraction is, the less selective it is. Even if we have very selective extraction techniques that will be detailed in the following. And we have to take care, because in the pharma sector, the thermal decomposition could be a major issue. So we have to be careful. And now I would like to present the green chemistry approach to extraction. Usually we need to use GRAS solvent. GRAS stands for generally recognized as safe solvents. We need shorter extraction time, energy efficiency, and an efficient removal of solvent from the extracts. So let's have a look to the extraction technique. In green, you find green chemistry extraction techniques. The old extraction technique, the soft select extraction, is the oldest approach and usually used toxic solvents to extract compounds, and for this reason, emergent extraction techniques, we will focus on emergent and green extraction techniques. In this slide, I will present the least important, and then we go in more depth with the pressurized liquid extraction, supercritical fluid extraction, and microwave extraction in a very short while. Let's start from steam distillation and hydrodistillation. These techniques make use of steam or boiling water, steam in steam distillation, and boiling water in hydrodistillation to recover volatile compounds from food waste. These techniques were very useful for the recovery of essential oils used as flavoring or as also antimicrobial in food, cosmetic, and pharmaceutical sectors. And we go on with the ultrasound assisted extraction. In this case, the ultrasound are crucial for the recovery of target compounds from cellulosic byproducts, because the ultrasound wave is able to disrupt the cells, the vegetal cells, and to facilitate the release of extractable compounds. And this way we have a greater penetration of the solvents and a milder operational conditions. It was used for the recovery of polyphenols, which are sensitive, interesting nutraceutical from a wide gamut of food wastes. And then we go on with the pulse electric field extraction. In this case, the electric field, a high voltage is applied for a few microseconds again and again. And this provokes the disruption of cell membrane and produce pores in the cell membranes. For the recovery of polyphenols from grape seeds, but also betaline pigments from red beetroot and pectin from a vast variety of vegetables. Now we will go in more depth with the most important techniques, which are pressurized liquid extraction, supercritical fluid extraction, and microwave assisted extraction. We start with the pressurized liquid extraction. Actually, it is a development of the old soft-slap approach because if we keep our solvent under pressure, we are able to use a higher temperature, higher than the boiling point of the solvent. This way, the solvent power increases and the extraction time decreases. The pressure is usually released in the end through a valve, and both solid and liquid sample can undergo this kind of extraction. The extraction is fast, but again, we have to care about the thermalability of our target compounds. There's a particular kind of pressurized liquid extraction that is called superheated water extraction. In this case, the solvent is actually water. What is greener than water? Nothing, I guess. So we use water below the critical point, which is 374 Celsius degrees and 218 bar. Usually we use water at 250 degrees with 50 bar of pressure. The viscosity and polarity in this case are similar to those of methanol and acetonitrile, for example, because the dielectric constant of water decreases with increasing temperature. The dipoles of water are not able to orient anymore, and the polarity of water is drastically reduced. This way, water can mimic an organic solvent, and the technique is green, safe, and obviously cheap. Which are the applications for these two techniques? PLE was used for the extraction of antioxidant, anthocyanins, and pro-anthocyanidins from, for example, from lingonberry pomace, while superheated water extraction was used for the recovery of polyphenols from wine grape pomace. Let's move a step further with a crucial extraction technique, which is supercritical fluid extraction. In this case, we use carbon dioxide in supercritical conditions at temperature above 31 degrees Celsius and with pressure above 73.8 megapascal. The low viscosity of this fluid and the surface temperature and the surface tension of this fluid is similar to those of typical organic solvents. The density can be modulated by a variation of pressure and temperature for a fine tuning of the polarity of this fluid according to the necessities of the target compounds. I would say that we can tailor-made the extraction procedure via modulation of the polarity of the supercritical fluid. CO2 is not toxic in itself. It is environmentally benign, I mean more than organic solvents for sure. It is a low-cost, uninflammable, inert, and easy to recycle material. So the concentration of the extract is also very easy because we only need to release the pressure, and carbon dioxide would go back to the would be recycled in the system. We can use modificators of the carbon dioxide to increase the polarity if necessary. For example, we can use methanol. And as I told you, if we release the pressure, CO2 becomes a gas again, and the extracts are free from any toxic solvents. In this table, you can see how many applications we can find in the vast literature as regard the supercritical fluid extraction of target compounds, of bioactive and nutraceuticals from food waste. Food waste that are peels, bagasse, residues, whole mass, seeds, coffee grounds, waste waters, and again and again, and also other kind of food waste. Target compounds can be fragrance compound or antioxidant compounds, including polyphenols, but also lipids, high added value lipids, as for example polyunsaturated fatty acid, but also chlorophylls and carotenoids pigments, and for example benzyl isothiocyanate from papaya seeds, and so on. We have references here. If you need, I can be in contact with you to give more details. Let's go on with the microwave assisted extraction. And in this case, we use the microwave energy with wavelength around from 1 to 1000 millimeters, and with frequencies in the gigahertz region. Well, we use this microwave energy to heat polar solvents which could be in rotational resonance with the electromagnetic wave. The temperature increases due to this rotational resonance, and the longer the wavelength, the deeper is the penetration of energy inside the vessel, and the higher would be the homogeneity of heating. This extraction technique is quite fast, less than 30 minutes, and the volume of solvent can be very low. But we have to use transparent vessels which are transparent to the microwave, obviously, and the vessel can be open if the temperature required is lower than the boiling point of the solvent, or it has to be closed if we are looking for volatile analytes as flavors, for example, or if the temperature needed, or if the needed temperature is higher than the boiling point of our solvent. Here you find the applications. There are many applications in the for food waste. I told you before that the quercetin is a nutraceutical that can help in the treatment of cancer by chemotherapy. It is protective. It can be extracted by microwave-assisted extraction, but also we find pectins and phenols, polyphenols, and also triterpene saponins. You remember I told you before that we need bio-based surfactants sometimes in the extraction process. Now we find saponins that are really useful in this respect. And again, polyphenols and pectin and so on. Again, the food waste, we can treat a vast variety of food wastes by microwave-assisted extraction, and from fruit rings to peels and to pomas and so on. Okay, well, now we go to the last step in our extraction procedure. Remember, we have the pre-treatment, the separation of small from large macromolecule, and then the extraction itself, the core of our process, and last but not least, the purification and isolation of target compounds. In this context, obviously, chromatography plays a major role because ion exchanger or ion affinity chromatography can be used, for example, for the fractionation of charged whey proteins, and we will see it in a very short while, or for the recovery of compounds, of phenolic compounds from agricultural food waste and food waste. Nanofiltration, again, I told you before, that can be useful for the demineralization of whey to recover lactose as a retentate, because in nanofiltration only water and salts go through the pores. And it was also used for the fractionation of different phenolic classics from winery sludges and artichoke wastewaters or olive meal wastewaters. And also electrodialysis is important. In this case, anions and cations migrate towards the anode and the cathode, but the ion exchange membranes prevent co-ions from passing the membrane via a Donnan electrostatic repulsion. This way we can demineralize many different matrices. And I would like to emphasize the fourth purification and isolation method, which is magnetic fishing. If you use magnetic fishing, actually, the third step of the whole procedure can be skipped, because in magnetic fishing, target compounds bind to magnetic particles which bear a specific ion exchange or hydrophobic ligand, and in this way, the target compounds bind with the magnetic particle, and in a very, very efficient and selective way, and then a simple magnetic separator, a magnet, is able to separate what we have fished, actually, from the matrix. And so I think that magnetic fishing, which relies on the absorption or ion exchange mechanisms, will be used more and more in the future, just because it enables us to skip many steps in the extraction procedure. And last but not least, the aqueous-to-phase system, in which hydrophobic and electrostatic interaction occur between the target compounds and the phase component, and for example, protein may precipitate when they are exposed to a particular extractant with which it is not compatible. Well, we go towards the conclusion with a case study. I would like to illustrate the biorefinery approach to whey. Whey is the lipid that is left after the cheese making. And whey was considered a waste of the cheese industry for a long time, but I would say that it is a precious source of nutraceutical. Let's have a look to the process which occurs within a biorefinery, a whey biorefinery. First of all, whey undergoes a microfiltration to remove large particles as bacteria, casein, micelles, and fat. After this microfiltration, you will probably remember that microfiltration relies on a membrane with the largest pore. After microfiltration, we can decide, do we want to recover lactose, do we want to fractionate the solids, or do we want to concentrate the solids? If we need only a concentration of solids, we may use reverse osmosis, in which only water goes to water can pass the pore, and on the retentate in a reverse osmosis membrane, we find obviously the powder of whey, which contains obviously salts and lactose and proteins. Since whey concentrates are used for outlets and as a pre-workout dietary supplement, sometimes we are not willing to find salts and lactose in the whey concentrate. For this reason, we go to a we try to fractionate the solids to recover only protein to be used as food supplement, and to have a desalinization of whey. How can we do that? If we need to have a desalinization of whey, we can use nanofiltration, for example, or ion exchange or electrodialysis. But nanofiltration is very easy because water and salts go through the pores, and in the retentate we find desalinated whey. Okay. Instead, if we are focused on protein, we can decide to perform an ion exchange of the whey feedstock. In this case, a single protein fraction can be recovered, or we can recover what we call a whey protein isolate with a very high percentage of protein and without lactose and without salts. If we instead of ion exchange we go on with ultrafiltration, we have we have a retentate and a permeate. In the permeate of the ultrafiltration, we find salts, water, and lactose, and we perform an additional, in a cascading approach, an additional nanofiltration of the permeate of ultrafiltration. We can subsequently separate lactose that is found in the nanofiltration retentate from the permeate, which contains minerals and water. Again, in a cascading membrane approach, I can filter with a reversed osmosis membrane the permeate of the nanofiltration, of the permeate of the ultrafiltration in a cascading approach, and I can separate minerals from water, because water goes through the pores while minerals are found in the reversed osmosis retentate. We don't have to forget about the retentate of the first step, the first filtration step, which was ultrafiltration. The retentate of the ultrafiltration can undergo evaporation, simple evaporation, to obtain a whey protein concentrate, which also contains salt and doesn't contain lactose and salts, but we can also have an ion exchange process to isolate specific protein fractions, and we can also hydrolyze and fractionate the retentate to obtain bioactive peptides. As I told you before, lactoferrin is particularly important, and globulins are particularly important. Last, the lactose conversion can result in fermentation products as ethanol, lactic acid, single-cell protein, vitamins, and penicillins, or it can be hydrolyzed to glucose and galactose, or we can have other different chemical output. Well, after this, I only have to thank you for your kind attention, and I'm here to answer to some questions of yours. What are the purification techniques for water-soluble compounds? Well, purification techniques. As I was just telling you before, chromatography is the main purification technique. Probably you know that we have at least 4 different separation mechanisms. So we can go through for example, ion exchange chromatography if the analytes are in a charge status positive or negative. Or we can go with adsorption chromatography in case hydrophobic interaction are important. But please don't forget about size exclusion chromatography. In this case, we have the separation of big molecules from small molecules, and in the pharma sector, what is I think that the most important chromatographic technique, or one of the most important, is the affinity chromatography, in which a ligand is immobilized onto the stationary phase, and with a very high selectivity, it can biologically bind a target compound. Think about enzyme substrate interreactions, or receptor hormone interaction, or enzyme inhibitors interreactions. So chromatography is one of the techniques, even if, as I told you before, we can find also other important techniques. Well, I guess you can find this production cost on the internet. I can check for you later, and if you contact me, I can be of more help, for example. Enzyme production is very important, and we can extract, for example, cellulase or other important enzyme from food waste itself. Cellulase is very important because, you know, if you need to recover high added value compounds from the cellulosic biomass, you need cellulase. So this is an important issue. Obviously, I'm not focused on the market aspect of this issue, but I'm sure you can find production costs on the internet. Among all extraction techniques, can you say which is very less expensive and easy to do than other, especially for natural products? Well, I guess there's no single answer to these questions. For sure, the less expensive depends on the specific analyte. Some extraction techniques are more suitable for some particular analytes because, as I told you before, the extraction efficiency is regulated by a distribution constant, which in turn depends on the analyte nature, but also on the nature of the initial phases of the extraction. So I guess that one of the most used, I guess that it depends on the specific application. For sure, supercritical fluid extraction is very effective, and when we are talking about the pharma sector, the effectiveness of the technique is not the main issue. The main issue, I guess, should be safety, and in this context, carbon dioxide that will not remain inside the extracts is particularly useful for sure. Oh, well, for insulin, I guess that you can try to extract insulin also by supercritical fluid extraction, but a research on the literature should be done and for a comparative evaluation of the process. I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with the Aspen Plus software, so I guess I'm not able to answer this question for the life cycle assessment. And activities like antioxidant and so on. How would one can make target-specific activity with biomolecules? Make target-specific activity. Well, okay. You know that according to the nature of the molecule, you can predict the activity of the molecule itself. For example, if you have a polyphenol, you will know that the hydroxyl moiety in the molecule would respond to the reactive oxygen species, becoming itself a very stabilized radical. So you can infer the activity of the molecule from its structure. From sugarcane waste product, we can get, no, not all nutraceuticals, obviously. You can, you can get basic platform chemical from sugar, but not all nutraceuticals. It is not convenient or expedient to go on with the transformation, one transformation after another transformation. And so what is usually done with sugar is to obtain some, usually 12 platform chemicals. The most important platform chemicals that you can get from sugar are, for example, succinic acid, which is useful for the production of polybutylene succinate, that is a bioplastic. I mean, you can go through any specific raw material, any specific food waste has its own specific target compound. It is not useful to try to transform molecules. It is much more useful to find the specific feedstock to provide us with that specific nutraceutical. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your valuable session.
Thank you.
Definitely, it will be most helpful for our faculty fraternity and also research scholars. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank
Now I
you.
request, Dr. Jagdish Panda sir to say vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Madam, thank you very much. First of all, actually, we are very much elated with this wonderful session and different kind of extraction methods. Actually, in the so far recent textbooks also not yet clearly mentioned the what you have given the clear tabular form, different extraction methods. That's actually wonderful, madam. And we got a very good information about different extraction methods. And it really is a wonderful experience for all of us, the participants and all of us. And on behalf of the Raghu management, Sri Kalidindi Raghu, our chairman, sir, and on behalf of me and my colleagues, on behalf of my all participants and from all over India and other participants, I thank you very much, madam, for accepting our invitation. And especially, I must say thanks to the Dr. Profula, who is actually instrumental in talking to you and to make you accept this program. And I thank you once again, you and your colleagues and your head of the department for allowing to have you with us two sessions. And thank you very much, madam, for your wonderful session.
Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. We keep in contact for any necessities. Thank you, and goodbye.
So